Ashishiguru Bhavanamidandavika Girijari Radvinod Bihari Radha Govinda Juki
Jai
Nityānanda Vishnu Vishnupada Paramahansa Bhagavata Aspatera Sata Śrī Srimad Abhay Charanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki
Jai
Nityānanda Vishnupad Paramahansa Bhagavata Aspatera Sata Śrī Srimad Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj Srila Gurudev Ki
Jai
Shri Gauriya Guru Varga Ki
Jai
Prem Se Gosi Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinda Ki Shri Rup Shri Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Das Raghunath Goswami Prabhu Ki
Jai
Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki
Jai
Samagata Bhaktivinda Ki
Jai
Jai Gaura Premanande
Hari Hari Gurave Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Itadalaya Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadabhaktaya Namo Namaha Bandeham Shri Guru Shri Juta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Om Ajnanati Mirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahabhadanaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gaura Tishe Namaha Nityanandam Namastubhyam Prem Ananda Pradayane Kalo Kalamashanashaya Janava Pataye Namaha Ajanulambita Bhujo Kanakavadato Samkirtanaika Pitaro Kamalaya Taksho Vishvambaro Dvijavaro Yugadharma Palo Vande Jagat Priyakaro Karunavataro Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Sahodito Gaudaudaye Pushpavanto Chitro Shamdo Tamonudo Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanshana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. Jayatam Shruto Pangor Mamamandamater Gati Matsarvasva Padam Bojo Radha Madana Mohano Divyad Vrindaranya Kalpadrumadha Shrimad Ratanagara Singhasanasto Shrimad Radha Srila Govinda Devo Preshtadibhi Sevyamano Smarami Shriman Rasarasarambi Vamshivata Tatakstitaha Karshan Venu Swanayir Gopir Gopinata Shriyestunaha Bhaktya Vihina Aparadha Lakshay Kshiptascha Kamari Taranga Madhye Kripa Maitvam Sharanam Prapanna Vrinde Numaste Charanarvindam. Śrī Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Śrī Advaita Gadadhar Śrīvas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. First of all, I'm offering my unlimited Dandavat pranams and my Shraddha Pushpanjali at the lotus feet of my most worshipable beloved Gurudev, Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Ashtatarashata Shri Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada. Then I'm offering my same unlimited Dandavat pranams and my Shraddha Pushpanjali at the lotus feet of my most worshipable beloved Siksha Gurudevs, Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Asto Tarasata Shri Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj and Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Asto Tarasata Shri Srila Bhakti Vedanta Narayana Goswami Maharaj. I offer my unlimited Dandavat pranams at the lotus feet of my Sri Sri Rupa Nuga Guru Varga. And I offer my Dandavat pranams to all the Vaishnavas and to all the Vaishnavis. So yesterday was Nityananda Trayodasi. And we had a very lengthy reading yesterday from Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj's book, The Golden Volcano of Divine Love. And there we read one chapter. But after I realized it was like 2.5 hours that it took to read that chapter. And then in the evening we also had a somewhat lengthy reading, at least 1.5 hours. And we read from the 5th chapter of Chaitanya Charitamrita. We had read the previous night, the beginning of that chapter, some of it. But what we read was the later portion of the chapter. So we were able to hear some degree of Siddhanta, Nityananda Tattva. Certainly we heard some of that. And also some Leela, very nicely, Srila Sridhar Maharaj. He also presented such a beautiful understanding of Srila Nityananda Prabhu. So, the question is, you know what the question is?
What should we read tonight?
Yes. Well, everyone can mention what they think. I know what Rishabdev Prabhu is going to say.
I want you to finish this book before you go.
I was going to say without Kusumanjali.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyone else?
What was the question? Sorry.
Like, what should we read this evening?
Without Kusumanjali.
I had some idea, if the devotees wanted, we could continue with Nityananda Katha, in which we could read some of the pastimes of Lord Nityananda, as narrated in Caitanya-bhagavata. I mean, we didn't even tell the pastime of Jaga and Madhya. We didn't even read that. But, you know.
Still dry over.
Yeah, that's true.
My vote is more Leela of Nityananda.
Same here. I second that. Okay.
Yeah. All right.
With the promise that you'll just stay until you finish.
No promises can be made by conditioned souls. We don't know whether we'll live the next day. So I have it. Anyone want to suggest which particular leelas or chapters of Lord Nityananda?
Do you have the Caitanya-bhagavata there?
Yeah.
Well, I wish we could start with childhood pastimes and then gradually work on.
Well, that'll take, the childhood pastimes will take pretty much Jaga and Madhya. That's what I'm feeling. I'm feeling we have to tell the pastime of Jaga and Madhya. I'll see how I can find it here, because this is a very old. I'll try to find that chapter. It was not so easy. Let's see.
I did a video conference to the devotees in Venezuela and talked all, I talked to them quite a bit. I touched on a lot of things. Very, very nice. Especially the way Vrindavan Thakur explained.
So we have Nityananda's childhood pastimes and travel to holy places. And then in Madhya Kanda, by the third chapter, the Lord manifests his Varaha form in the house of Murari Gupta, and he meets with Nityananda. So we heard a little bit about that, but very little. That's a very extraordinary description in Caitanya-bhagavata of the ecstasies that Lord Nityananda Prabhu expressed and experienced when meeting Mahaprabhu. It went on and on and on. So then everybody had no doubt. But Srila Sridhar Maharaj just very, very little. Briefly he mentioned that. Then comes chapter 4 of Madhya Kanda, revelation of Nityananda's glories. You know what that one is? The Vyas Puja ceremony, Vyas Puja festival. But there's so much more in that chapter. Then, revelation of Nityananda's glories is a chapter in itself, and then Lord Nityananda's Vyas Puja ceremony and his darshan of the Lord's six-armed form. Then Then comes chapter 12, the glories of Nityananda, and chapter 13 is the deliverance of Jaga and Madhya. And then comes Yamaraja's Sankirtan chapter, after the deliverance of Jaga and Madhya. So then the Antyakanda is another chapter in chapter 5, the Antyakanda, the pastimes of Nityananda.
Is this Chaitanya-bhagavata?
Yeah, Caitanya-bhagavata. And then the next chapter after that, chapter 6, is called The Glories of Śrī Nityananda Prabhu. This is toward the very end of the book. Then there's that pastime in Sri Gadadhar's garden, where Nityananda Prabhu comes with some special rice. You hear that one? And then Gadadhar, he asks Gadadhar to cook and offer, and then Mahaprabhu arrives, and they take that special rice. So, okay. Yes, it is certainly in order to read Jaga and Madhya. But the glories of Lord Nityananda, let me see how long that is. The chapter before that. Oh, it's not very long. It's probably describing how Mahaprabhu, instructed Nityananda and Haridas to go door to door and all that. So, and then the deliverance of Jaga and Madhya is it's quite a long chapter. We're already up to 250 verses. The other is like 63 verses. We're into the 300s now. Probably one of the longest chapters. Now we're up to 400. It's 402 verses. So, yeah, we gotta read this. Let me just check and see about I'll start with that. So this is that 63 verse chapter before it, but I'll see, because it doesn't have a summary or anything like that of the chapter. So, Jaya Vishwambara Sarva Vaishnavera Nath Bhakti Diya Jive Prabhu Kara Atmasat. All glories to Vishwambar, the Lord of all Vaishnavas. O Lord, please bestow your devotional service on the living entities and deliver them. Heno Lila Nityananda Vishwambara Sange Navadvipe Dui Jane Kore Bahurange. In this way, Lord Nityananda and Lord Vishwambar enjoyed various pastimes in Navadvip. Lord Nityananda, Krishna Anande Alokika Nityananda Rai, Niravadhi Balakar Prai Vyavasai. Lord Nityananda was fully absorbed in transcendental ecstatic love for Krishna. Yet, he constantly behaved like a young boy. So Srila Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, this is that version that has his purports. A very short little purport I'm reading. Persons who are intoxicated by material happiness do not possess any information about the happiness derived from Krishna's service. Since Lord Nityananda was fully intoxicated by ecstatic love for Krishna, he constantly displayed the characteristics of a small boy. People who are intoxicated by material enjoyment, they deviate from the principle of simplicity by taking shelter of worldly deceit. Such material conceptions were never found in the characteristics of Nityananda. Nityananda spoke sweetly with everyone. Nityananda spoke sweetly with everyone he saw. He engaged in dancing, singing, playing musical instruments, and laughing. Sometimes he roared loudly out of his own ecstasy. Hearing his roar, everyone became struck with wonder. During the rainy season, the waves of the Ganga were full of crocodiles, yet Nityananda fearlessly floated in those waters. Yes. Prabhupada says, Nityananda did not for even a moment become afraid to play in the waters of such crocodile-infested river. On seeing him floating, people became frightened, and they exclaimed, "Alas, alas!" But Nityananda smiled and continued to float. Nityananda floated in the Ganga in the mood of Ananta. Not understanding his glories, everyone lamented, "Alas, alas." Sometimes he lost consciousness due to ecstatic love, and he did not regain consciousness even after 3 or 4 days.
I thought you were going to say minutes.
In this way, Nityananda performed many other inconceivable pastimes. I could not describe them all, even if I possessed unlimited mouths. By providence, one day, Nityananda came before the Lord while he was sitting. In the mood of a child, Nityananda had no clothes on. He constantly smiled, and tears of love flowed from his lotus eyes. Prabhupada says, as needy boys always cry to express their misery, Lord Nityananda, in an opposite mood, always joyful, he smiled and shed tears of love. Sometimes his clothes would loosen, and as a result, his childish sweetness contradicted the principle of shyness. Lord Nityananda roared loudly, and he repeatedly proclaimed, "Nimai Pandit of Madhya is my Lord. More Prabhu Nimai Pandit Nadyar." On seeing Nityananda without any clothes on, the Lord laughed. The beautiful body of Nityananda was full of effulgence. The Lord hurriedly took off the cloth from his own head, and he put it on Nityananda, who simply laughed. Prabhupada says, whenever Nityananda would take off his clothes out of ecstasy, Mahaprabhu covered Nityananda's body with the cloth that the Lord tied on his own head. By this action of Mahaprabhu, Nityananda smiled and expressed his childish nature. Thereafter, the Lord smeared sandalwood paste on Nityananda's transcendental body and offered him a flower garland. The Lord offered Nityananda an asana to sit in front of him. Then the Lord offered prayers while all the devotees attentively listened. Mahaprabhu said, "Name Nityananda tumi, Rupe Nityananda, tumi Nityananda, Ram Murti Manta." Your name is Nityananda, and your form is Nityananda, full of eternal bliss. You are directly Lord Balaram. So Prabhupada says, while offering prayers to Nityananda, Mahaprabhu said, "Your name is Nityananda, and your form is directly Nityananda, eternal bliss. The flow of bliss is never checked in you. You are directly Lord Balaram." So, in the Brihan Yamala, Lord Krishna speaks as follows. "Balaramo mamai vamsha sopi tatra bhavishyati Nityananda iti kyato nyasi chudamani kshito." Who spoke this? Lord Krishna. In what book? The Brihad Yamala. Yamala. The translation is, Sri Balaram, who is my expansion, will also appear in Navadvip as the crest jewel among the sannyasis and will be known as Sri Nityananda. E Krishna Navadvipe Śrī Caitanya-Chandra, Se Balaram Sange Sri Nityananda. That original Lord Krishna appeared in Navadvip as Lord Chaitanya, and Balaram appeared with him as Lord Nityananda. Nityananda Parayatan Bojan Veda Vebar, Nityananda Vina Kichu Nahika Tomar. You're traveling. This is Mahaprabhu still offering prayers to Nityananda. You're traveling, you're eating, and your dealings are all full of eternal bliss. There is never any diminution in your enjoyment of eternal bliss. So Srimad Mahaprabhu said, O Nityananda, this is the commentary, O Nityananda, there is no interruption of bliss in your traveling, your eating, and all varieties of behavior. Tomare bhujite shakti manushyara kota, parama susatya tumi yata Krishna tata. How can human beings understand you? It is a fact that you are present wherever Krishna is. Yes. Chaitanyer rase Nityananda Mahamati, Jai Bolen Jai Koren Sarvatra Sammati. The most magnanimous Nityananda is absorbed in ecstatic love for Lord Chaitanya. So whatever he speaks or whatever he does is always approved by the Lord. Then the Lord said to Nityananda, give me a piece of your kopin. I have a great desire to have it. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada is saying, while traveling to the holy places with one sannyasi, Lord Nityananda formally accepted the principle of wearing the Brahmachari kopin. Mahaprabhu expressed a desire to beg that kopin, which is the sign of a Brahmachari. The wearing of kopin entails covering the lower part of one's body with the minimum required cloth. Persons who are intoxicated by material enjoyment engage in deceitfulness in the name of civilization, and they declare the absence of simplicity as gentlemanliness by dressing opulently. In order to stop dressing and eating opulently, which are aimed at maintaining adultery, the acceptance of kopin is indicative of the greatness of ashram dharma, the occupational duty of a particular caste. So after speaking in this way, the Lord took Nityananda's kopin and he tore it into many small pieces. The Lord then personally distributed those pieces to every one of the Vaishnavas, and then the Lord said, tie this piece of cloth on your head. What to speak of others? Even the great mystic yogis desire this. Simply by the mercy of Nityananda, one obtains devotional service of Vishnu. Know it for certain that Nityananda is the full potency of Krishna. So Mahaprabhu said, you should know Śrī Nityananda Prabhu as the complete potency of Lord Krishna. He is the topmost among the servants of Krishna. This is Prabhupada's purport. Only by his mercy, what is he? He's the topmost among the servants of Krishna. Only by his mercy can one achieve devotion to Vishnu. He is the form of Vishnu, presiding over the Sandini potency. What is the Sandini potency?
Exists.
Yes. Although he is Lord Vishnu himself, he nevertheless serves the Supreme Vishnu. He serves the origin of all Vishnu tattvas. Only by his mercy is the living entity's propensity for worshipping Hari awakened. In his form as the younger sister of Radharani, Śrī Nityananda Prabhu nourishes conjugal mellows. That is why Sri Thakur Narottam has said, Heno nitai vine bai, Radha Krishna paite nai, Dridha kori dharo nitayar pai. Unless one takes shelter under the shade of the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda, it will be very difficult for him to approach Radha Krishna. If one actually wants to enter into the dancing party of Radha Krishna, he must firmly catch hold of the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda. So as the Supreme Jagat Guru, Śrī Nityananda Prabhu alone is the origin of Guru Tattva. In regards to the devotee Jagat Guru, the spiritual master is an incarnation of Śrī Nityananda, who is the manifestation of Śrī Caitanya. The spiritual master is most dear to Lord Krishna because, like Śrī Nityananda, he is also a manifestation of Śrī Caitanya. And he is renowned to be as good as Nityananda, Sakshad Haritvena. The travelers on the path of devotional service do not accept the identification of Nityananda's family through the seminal consideration. He's talking about the Nityananda Vamshas. Yes, the non-devotee smartas who are averse to the service of Vishnu attribute such unreasonable propositions to the family of Nityananda, but the devotees of the Lord are completely against this. The family of Nityananda is based on disciplic succession. Since it is not based on seminal succession, many ordinary villagers who were disciples of Virabhadra Prabhu considered themselves as belonging to the family of Śrī Nityananda. So that's a lie. They're not in the actual family bloodline, seminal, of Lord Nityananda. Yeah, but they were disciples. What I heard is that Virabhadra Prabhu, I don't think he even married, or at least he didn't have any children. So what they're claiming as being in the Nityananda Vamsha, it's something a little bit similar to what has gone on with the caste Goswamis in Vrindavan. Like, for example, did Gopal Bhatta Goswami get married and have children? No. So, where is that line coming from? It's coming from his disciples, who he engaged in rendering seva to Radharaman. And they were very exalted, pure, Mahabhagavad Vaishnavas. But in course of time, the family, seminal succession, they started to adopt the title of Goswami, to this day. And there's so much false ego that is connected with that. One time, there's one little story. Who was it? It was Nemi Maharaj and myself. There was maybe also Chaitanya Maharaj might have been walking with us. This was like on the main road in front of Krishna Balaram Mandir. And I think that was Gurudev, at the end of Kartik, he would always have this, they would have a parade and he would ride on a float, and he would come as far as ISKCON, and then he would get off and go back by car. So from there, the parade kind of ended, and we were walking back, probably going to get a rickshaw or whatever, And all of a sudden, this one, he looked like he was maybe 10 years old, 9 or 10 years old. And he comes in front of us, Western-bodied, saffron-clad sannyasis. And then how did he first begin? He said,
in English, right?
in English, he spoke it to us. He looked at us and with like this, you know. He says, "You're not real devotees of Krishna."
Oh, God.
You know? And we said, "Well, who are you?" "I'm such and such." He tells his name, and then he says, "Goswami." We said, "Oh, okay. You're Goswami." Oh. You know? And it was almost ridiculous because he had so much false ego of being born into one of those caste Goswami families, you know? And we just kind of laughed at him. You know? So, anyway, Srila Prabhupada, he had battles against the caste Goswamis. Nityananda Vamshas in Bengal, they're very, very big. They worship like as if they're directly incarnations of Lord Nityananda, and even though they have no connection. The village people.
Gurudev had many court cases against them.
Yeah. So the non-devotee the family of Nityananda is based on disciplic succession. And since it is not based on seminal succession, many ordinary villagers who were disciples of Virabhadra Prabhu considered themselves as belonging to the family of Śrī Nityananda. The book Nityananda Vamsha Vistar, composed by a person from Beniatola, Calcutta, at the end of the 19th century, is modern and opposed to history. So now Mahaprabhu continues, telling Nityananda is the second manifestation of Krishna. He serves the Lord as his companion, his friend, his bed, his ornaments, well-wisher, and brother. So then, Prabhupada comments, Krishna's second manifestation, Sri Baladev Prabhu, is Sri Gaur Sundar's second manifestation, Nityananda Prabhu. Lord Krishna is one without a second, and Lord Nityananda is his second manifestation. Nityananda is inseparably related to the absolute personality of Godhead, Krishna. He is the companion of Gauranga, the friend of Gauranga, the bed of Gauranga, the carrier of Gauranga, the ornaments of Gauranga, and the relative of Gauranga in the form of his elder brother. Mahaprabhu continues, the characteristics of Nityananda are incomprehensible to the Vedas. He is the origin, he is the protector, and he is the friend of all living entities. So then Prabhupada says, the characteristics of Nityananda are incomprehensible to the knowers of the Vedas. Coming from this Nityananda, the Sankarshan form of Vasudeva in Maha Vaikuntha, considered by the followers of the Pancharatas, is not Nityananda's partial identity. He is a self-manifested object. From him, Karanadakshay Vishnu, Garbhadakshay Vishnu, and Kiradakshay Vishnu manifest and float in the three oceans. These three Vishnus reside in Maha Vaikuntha as Aniruddha, Pradyumna, and Sankarshan as the cause of both Vaikuntha and the material world. The form of Vishnu presiding over the Sandini potency manifests Karandakshay Vishnu from whom all the occasional incarnations are manifested. Since the living entities who belong to the marginal energy of the Lord are manifested from Karanadakshay Vishnu, he is the father of all living entities. So here it is. Here's the statement. Jiva Tattva. Since the living entities who belong to the marginal energy of the Lord are manifested from Karanadakshay Vishnu, he is the father of all living entities. Yeah. All the marginal jivas who are the Baddha jivas, he's the father. Because he is the maintainer of all living entities, he is the protector. And because he is the shelter of all living entities, he is the friend. Lord Nityananda is the supreme controller, and the living entities are his separated parts. They are born from the marginal energy of the Lord, and they are servants of the Lord. In Chaitanya-bhagavata, Adi 5, it is stated, quote, one variety of the pastimes of the spiritual energy is described as pure goodness, Vishuddha Sattva. It comprises all the abodes of Vaikuntha. The 6 attributes are all spiritual. Know for certain that they are all manifestations of the opulence of Sankarshan. There is one marginal potency known as the Jiva. Mahasankarshan is the shelter of all Jivas. Mahaprabhu continues, his dealings are full of transcendental mellows for Krishna. Ihar Vyabhara sab Krishna Rasamoy, Krishna Rasamoy. Ihane sevile Krishna prema bhakti hoy. So his dealings are full of transcendental rasa, Krishna Rasamoy. Just by serving him, one obtains devotional service in love of Krishna. Ihane sevile Krishna prem bhakti hoy. By serving him, Krishna prem bhakti comes. So Prabhupada comments, since Nityananda was always eager to serve Krishna in ecstatic love, simply by serving him, the serving propensity of persons who are thirsty after loving devotional service to Krishna will be fully awakened. In the Chaitanya-charitamrita, it is stated as follows. We read this verse yesterday, at night. It's the final verse, practically, of that 5th chapter. Jai Jai Nityananda Charanaravinda Jaha Hoite Painu Shri Radha Govinda. All glory to the lotus feet of Lord Nityananda, by whose mercy I have attained Shri Radha Govinda. Who's telling that? Krishnadas Kaviraj. So now Mahaprabhu tells to all the devotees, Bhakti Kori Ihan Kopin Bandha Shire Mahayatne Iha Puja Koro Gya Gare. Tie the piece of his kopin on your head with devotion. Go home and worship it with great care. Now, being ordered by the Lord, all the devotees respectfully tied those pieces of kopin on their heads. So now Prabhupada has got a good comment here. By the order of Mahaprabhu, all the devotees tied the pieces of kopin on their heads. And by the order of the Lord, they took them to their houses and they regularly worshipped them with devotion. To consider the clothes that the Supreme Lord or his devotees wear below the navel on the lower parts of their body as equal to the clothes that ordinary people wear on the lower parts of their body is completely against the intention of the devotional scriptures. The dust of the feet and clothes for the lower part of the body of worshipable personalities are sources of strength for persons who are hankering after devotional service. If one considers these items abominable or equal to one's own, then the first level of devotional service known as Shraddha or faith is disturbed. In Chaitanya-charitamrita it is stated, Antya 16, quote, the dust of the feet of a devotee, the water that has washed the feet of a devotee, and the remnants of food left by a devotee are three very powerful substances. There is no possibility of one obtaining devotional service to Vishnu until one is fixed in the understanding that what? Shadiya Vaishnav Seva Nishtar Payeche Keva. Prabhupada used to quote this from Narottam Das Thakur. It means, without serving a pure devotee, one cannot advance in spiritual life. So, it is not proper for a person to consider his own stool and urine, or the stool and urine of those who are inferior to him, to be equal to the stool and urine of an exalted worshipable person. Just see. If one develops such a consideration, it will disturb his service to Hari, Guru and Vaishnava. And if one considers that which is not Hari, Guru and Vaishnava as Hari, Guru and Vaishnava, then instead of becoming faithful, such a person becomes faithless and deprived of respectable personalities' mercy. This is aversion to the service of the Lord on the non-devotional platform. So what significant points are being made here? Very interesting.
It is interesting.
Take the mic.
Interesting question. I've heard that even the stool and urine of a cow is superior to at least an ordinary humans. So in this verse, it's also saying that the stool and urine of a pure or exalted personality would be even superior to that.
Well, it's not talking about cow dung here.
No, I know, but
It's comparing different human levels of human beings.
Right.
So, for example, we hear that Lord Rishabhdev, when he was performing his pastimes, after being a king, after instructing his servants, then all of his pastimes of wandering here and there, even naked, and acting like a python, doing this python activity. But it was described there, of course, he's a Shakti Avesh avatar of Lord Vishnu, Lord Rishabhadev, and he it was described there that when he passed stool and urine, I don't remember all the details of that. You may remember better because your name is Rishabhdev Das. But it described there that the fragrance that came from that was like the powerful fragrance from roses, and it went and permeated for miles. Right? You know, Bhagavat Maharaj loves to tell Prabhupada stories, right? And he has this one story that I've heard him tell more than once, that when I was also there in Prabhupada's room when Prabhupada departed, and Bhagavat Maharaj was there, and it was like immediately after he departed, then not immediately, after like 20 minutes. They didn't give much time for the devotees to, drown in tears of separation and all of that, because they wanted to prepare Srila Prabhupada's body for the parikrama and for staying in the temple room all night long on the Vyasa-san. So I was fortunately able to stay in the room. Actually, Jayadvaita kind of, you can stay. So I stayed. But after they dressed Srila Prabhupada with fresh cloth, there was the cloth that he had been wearing. And Bhagavat Maharaj, who was also there, he snatched his kopin, Prabhupada's kopin. And he smelled the kopin, and he said it smelled like roses. So he likes to tell that particular pastime. But what is being told here, what was the glory of Ishwara Puripad?
That in service to his guru, Madhavendra Puri, he, in great devotion, would, because he was incontinent and not able to move, he would clean the body of Ishwara Puri.
Of Madhavendra Puri.
Madhavendra Puri.
Yes.
Of all the urine and stool that would be there.
Yes. And what did he gain from that seva?
Pure bhakti.
He became the guru of Śrī Caitanya Mahaprabhu. But there was another disciple who was there, named what?
Ramachandra Puri.
Yes. What did he do?
He would urge.
Yeah, because if they can't really hear you on the Facebook if you don't.
So Ramachandra Puri would very eagerly serve Vaishnavas and even Mahaprabhu copious, very voluminous amounts of prasadam, and give them more prasadam, and then they would say, "Oh, you're a renunciate."
Oh yeah, but that's later. I'm talking about at the time of the passing of Sri Madhavendra Puripad.
Oh,
Ramachandra Puri was also there, and Ishwara Puri was also there. And
so
what happened?
When he saw that Madhavendra Puri in separation was in so much lamentation and tears of ecstasy, in separation, moods of separation, and seemingly distressed, he said, "Oh, you should not do this at this time. You should just understand the absolute truth and be happy and chant and meditate on the Supreme Lord."
He said, you should meditate on what? Yes.
Impersonal Brahman.
Impersonal Brahman. And what happened to him? Madhavendra Puripad told him, "Leave me.
Get away from me. If I leave my body looking at you, I will be very unfortunate."
He was very, extremely displeased. So he was rejected at that final point. He was rejected by his own spiritual master. So, and later on, that rejection caused him to continue to commit so many Vaishnava aparads. And to who? Even when he came to Jagannath Puri. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he had reverence for him because he was the god brother of of Mahaprabhu's spiritual master. So he always behaved in a respectful way toward him. And also, Ramachandra Puri, he considered himself to be superior. So he would point out and criticize different things about Mahaprabhu's sannyas conduct, particularly his eating. And he would criticize in different ways, and the devotees would become very, very upset. But Mahaprabhu, like he was suggesting that Mahaprabhu is overeating and all of this. So Mahaprabhu reduced his eating, and as he was reducing his eating, his body was becoming thin. And the devotees were very upset. But Mahaprabhu, he gave that respect to him. And finally, after some time, Brahmachandra Puri finally went on his way and left Puri. And then all of the Vaishnavas were very relieved. But that personality was rejected, whereas Ishwara Puri was given the topmost benediction by Madhavendra Puri. Of all exalted personalities, he pleased his guru. And that's how he became Ishwara Puri, so exalted, pure devotee, directly the guru of Mahaprabhu. So, what's the point being made in this purport? That there is no possibility of one obtaining devotional service to Vishnu until one is fixed in this understanding of what? Chadiya Vaishnav Seva Nistarpayeche Keva. Without serving a pure devotee, one cannot advance in spiritual life. It is not proper for a person to consider his own stool and urine or the stool and urine of those who are inferior to him to be equal to the stool and urine of an exalted, worshipable person. If one develops such a consideration, that it's what? That is equal to the stool and urine of ordinary person, then it will disturb his service to Hari, Guru and Vaishnava. Because one has to always consider Sri Guru to be Sakshad Hari, right? Directly manifestation of Krishna. Whatever we observe in their personal bodily features and so forth, it's all transcendental, right? It was, I don't know, somehow or other, all of us Prabhupada disciples were so fortunate to have such a personality. And it was so easy to see Srila Prabhupada as being like every movement, every gesture, was completely transcendental, and even in his final days, when his body had deteriorated, there was such a powerful atmosphere in that room, in front of Srila Prabhupada, So, this is an important point, and Mahaprabhu gave the remnants of the kopin for all the devotees to worship Sri Nityananda Prabhu. So now the Lord said, listen, devotees, drink the water that has washed the feet of Nityananda. As soon as one drinks that water, one will develop fixed devotional service to Krishna. There is no doubt about it. Being ordered by the Lord, all the devotees immediately washed the feet of Nityananda with water and drank it. Some of the devotees drank 5 times, some drank 10 times. Nityananda laughed constantly, and he did not know what was going on. Sitting where he was, Gauranga Mahaprabhu, in great jubilation, personally distributed the water that had washed the feet of Nityananda. And after drinking the water from Nityananda's feet, everyone became intoxicated and loudly chanted the name of Hari. Someone said, "Today my life has become successful." Someone else said, "Today my material bondage is vanquished." Someone said, "Today I have become a servant of Krishna." Someone else said, "Today is the most auspicious day for me." And another said, "This water is so tasty that I still feel sweetness in my mouth." So Prabhupada's purport, after drinking, on the order of Sri Gaur Sundar, the water that had washed the feet of Sri Nityananda. Someone said, the water from Nityananda's feet is very tasty. After drinking this water, its sweet taste does not vanish. Even after drinking this water, the sweetness remains in the mouth for a long time. Since ordinary foolish people consider the water that has washed the feet of Nityananda as ordinary water, they remain entangled by the ropes of material desire. But the glories of this water is such that a devotee who drinks it becomes self-realized and understands his eternal position as a servant of the Lord. Meanwhile, someone else said, today all inauspiciousness has disappeared and a new dawn of self-realization has arisen. Those who consider Sri Nityananda's lotus feet similar to the feet of ordinary living entities and thus lack a taste for those lotus feet, they're understood to be devoid of devotion to Krishna. Those who drink the water that has washed the lotus feet of the Lord become intoxicated and constantly chant the holy names of the Lord. And those who are intoxicated by material enjoyment think themselves as Nityananda while posing as spiritual masters. Those who are intoxicated by material enjoyment, they think themselves as Nityananda while posing as spiritual masters. The material conceptions of such hellish persons increase their false ego and their foolishness. We could give a long commentary, but we shall refrain. Ki se Nityananda pado daker prabhav. What wonderful influence the water that washed the feet of Nityananda has. Pan matra sabe hoila chanchala svabhav. For just by drinking that water, everyone becomes agitated. After drinking that water, someone danced, someone sang, and someone rolled on the ground, and others roared loudly all the time. A tumultuous, ecstatic kirtan was begun, and all the devotees were completely overwhelmed as they danced. Soon, Sri Gaur Chandra roared loudly and began to dance profusely. Nityananda Swarup immediately got up and joined the Lord, and both lords danced in the midst of the devotees. No one knew who fell on whom, who caught whom, and who took whose feet dust on their heads. One cannot describe who cried by holding whose neck, or who did what. The devotees did not fear that they were with the Lord. Both the Lord and his servants danced together. Lord Nityananda and Lord Chaitanya embraced each other, and they danced in ecstasy. Oh, Krishna. Oh, okay. The earth shook by the weight of Nityananda's steps. Seeing his dancing, all the devotees chanted, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Being intoxicated with ecstasy, the two lords of Vaikuntha danced in the company of their devoted followers. And although the Vedas describe their appearance and disappearance, there is never an end to their pastimes. After dancing in this way for the entire day, Gaur Hari sat down with his associates. Clapping his hands 3 times, Sri Gaur Sundar frankly spoke to everyone as follows. Prabhu bole, E Nityananda Swarupere, Je karaye bhakti shraddha se kore amare. The Lord said, anyone who keeps faith and engages in the service of this Nityananda Swarup actually keeps faith and serves me. His lotus feet are worshipped by Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva. Therefore, all of you show love to him. If a person maintains even a tinge of envy towards him, then he is not dear to me even if he is a devotee. So Prabhupada says, Sri Nityananda Prabhu and Sri Gaur Sundar are non-different. Simply by serving the lotus feet of Sri Nityananda, one obtains the fruits of serving Sri Gaur Sundar. The lotus feet of Sri Nityananda are worshipped by qualitative incarnations like Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, and those who are neglectful of these most worshipable objects, maintaining envy for even a moment, and expressing eagerness to serve the external energy Maya, they can never become worthy candidates for Sri Gaur Sundar's affection. Mahaprabhu continued, Krishna will never leave that person who is touched by the air that has passed by Nityananda's body. Now, he says, Prabhupada says, subtle fragrance is spread by the air. The touch of Sri Nityananda's bodily fragrance makes a person's devotional service to Krishna so firm that the worshipable Lord Krishna can never reject him. Wow. So after hearing the Lord's words, all the devotees immediately chanted, Jai, Jai. Lord Gaurachandra becomes the master of one who hears these topics with devotion. Those who saw these pastimes of Nityananda Swarup, they know his glories in truth. Only Lord Chaitanya's most fortunate associates know the unlimited influence of Lord Nityananda. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Chanda Jan Vrindavana Das Tachu Pada Juge Gan. Accepting Sri Chaitanya and Nityananda Prabhu as my life and soul, I, Vrindavan Das, sing the glories of their lotus feet. Thus ends this English translation of the Gaudiya Bhashya commentary on Śrī Caitanya-bhagavata, Madhya chapter 12, entitled The Glories of Nityananda. So, it's become late, but I'm going to just read the summary of this chapter, which is the summary made by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. The next chapter 13, the Deliverance of Jaga and Madhya. And then tomorrow, we'll continue reading. Isn't that good, what we just read? Yeah. I mean, if we wouldn't have read that, how much would we have missed? So this chapter, the Deliverance of Jaga and Madhya, this chapter describes how Mahaprabhu spread the glorification, worship, and teachings of Krishna to each and every house through Nityananda and Haridas. Their preaching to Jaga and Madhya is also told in this chapter. Madhya's attack on Nityananda, Mahaprabhu's arrival at that spot and his invoking the Sudarshan Chakra, the two brothers' surrender at the lotus feet of Gaura, Gaur Nityananda's forgiveness and deliverance of Jaga and Madhya, the demigod's service to Gaura, and the consequences of committing Vaishnav Aparad. Since the pastimes of Sri Gaur Sundar are perceived through the eyes of love, ordinary people who were devoid of such love, they considered him simply as Nimai Pandit. Only fortunate souls saw his manifestations according to their respective qualifications. One day, Mahaprabhu instructed Nityananda and Haridas to go door to door and to beg everyone to worship Krishna, chant Krishna's names, and practice Krishna's teachings. And then at the end of the day, to inform him of the results. So although everyone there at first laughed on hearing what they were to beg, Nityananda and Haridas took the instruction on their heads, and they began to beg such alms from door to door. When householders respectfully invited the two sannyasis to accept alms, the two would, according to Mahaprabhu's instructions, beg them to chant Krishna's names, worship Krishna, and practice Krishna's teachings, and then they would leave. They wouldn't go into the house. Although pious people were happy to see their wonderful method of begging alms, and they promised to follow their request, some people blasphemed Lord Chaitanya and considered the two to be madmen, Haridas and Nityananda. Some people who were unable to enter Srivas's house during kirtan, they violently attacked the two and they threatened them with royal punishment. But being empowered by Śrī Caitanya, Nityananda and Haridas did not pay the least attention to them. In other words, they fearlessly went on with their activities. One day, the two Prabhus saw the most sinful drunkards, Jaga and Madhya. On seeing their pathetic condition, the hearts of Nityananda and Haridas, the most merciful deliverers of fallen souls, began to cry. And considering the two brothers as brilliant examples for Mahaprabhu's pastime of delivering fallen souls, they resolved to inform them of Mahaprabhu's most auspicious instructions, despite the potential dangers in doing so. Thus they loudly requested them to worship Krishna. And in spite of committing numerous sinful activities, Jaga and Madhya never had the opportunity of accumulating Vaishnava Parad. So, as a result, their good fortune for achieving the mercy of Gaur Nityananda was awakened. Blasphemy of Vaishnavas is a grave offense. It checks all piety and results in all degradation. Without the mercy of a Vaishnava, even Krishna's holy names, which are the best form of atonement, they cannot nullify an offense committed against a Vaishnava. All the scriptures have warned everyone by boldly declaring this fact. On hearing the call of Nityananda and Haridas, the two rogues thought that their carefree life was being disturbed. So they chased after the two sannyasis. And after the two Prabhus ran away, they narrated the incident at the feet of Gaur Sundar, who was sitting in the company of his devotees, and requested him to fulfill the meaning of his name, Patita Pavana, by delivering those sinners. When the assembled Vaishnavas realized that the two sinners have already been delivered by the merciful glance of Nityananda, they chanted the name of Hari in ecstasy. And when Haridas Thakur described to Advaita Acharya the various forms of Nityananda's restlessness and the difficulties that he had to experience as a result, Advaita glorified Nityananda on the pretext of criticizing him. Thereafter, Jagai and Madhya came and they camped on the bank of the Ganga where Mahaprabhu used to take bath. As a result, many people became frightened on hearing the sound of Mahaprabhu's kirtan at night. The two drunkards thought it was in glorification of Mangala Chandi, and they danced wildly under the influence of intoxication. Later, when they saw Mahaprabhu, they praised his kirtan. When Nityananda Prabhu went before them one night with a desire to deliver them, Madhya hit him in the head. Jaga was distressed on seeing this, and he checked Madhya, and he chastised him for committing such a sinful act. On receiving this news, Mahaprabhu immediately went there with his associates. When he saw that Nityananda's body was covered with blood, he called Sudarshan in order to punish the two sinners. Jaga and Madhya saw Sudarshan Chakra with their own eyes. The most merciful Nityananda Prabhu informed the Lord that he had been protected by Jaga, and he begged the Lord to spare the two brothers. And when Mahaprabhu heard that Jaga had protected Nityananda, he mercifully bestowed ecstatic love on him. On seeing Jagai's good fortune, the heart of Madhya was also transformed, and he fell at the lotus feet of Mahaprabhu and begged forgiveness. Then Mahaprabhu, however, did not agree to bestow mercy on him. Rather, he instructed Madhya to take shelter at the feet of who? Nityananda. And he requested Nityananda to bestow mercy on Madhya. So on the instruction of Sri Gaura, Madhya fell at the feet of Nityananda, who requested Mahaprabhu to bestow mercy on Madhya in exchange for all of his own piety. Wow. Madhya fell at the feet of Nityananda, who requested Mahaprabhu to bestow mercy on Madhya in exchange for all of his own piety. Wow. By the order of Mahaprabhu, Nityananda then tightly embraced Madhya and entered into his body. In this way, both Jaga and Madhya were delivered, and they began offering prayers to the two lords. Mahaprabhu then forbade them from committing sinful activities again. When they accepted this proposal, Mahaprabhu accepted the burden of their millions of lifetimes of sinful activities. After realizing the mercy of Mahaprabhu, Jaga and Madhya fell unconscious to the ground in ecstasy. Thereafter, Mahaprabhu had the two unconscious brothers brought to his own home, and after closing the doors from inside, he sat down in the association of the Vaishnavas. Due to transformation of ecstatic love, the two brothers began to roll on the ground. Which two brothers? Jaga and Madhya. In the house of Mahaprabhu. When by the will of Gaur Sundar, Shuddha Saraswati appeared on the tongues of the two brothers, they began offering meaningful prayers to Sri Sri Gaur Nityananda. As everyone there heard the drunkards' prayers to the lords, they were struck with wonder, and they considered this the causeless mercy of the Lord. From that day on, Mahaprabhu included Jaga and Madhya among his own associates. And he personally begged all the Vaishnavas to forgive their offenses and bestow mercy on them. After falling at the feet of all the devotees and receiving their blessings, Jaga and Madhya became free from all offenses. Their sinful reactions were then deposited with those who blasphemed the Vaishnavas. Whoa. Whoa. The sinful reactions of those two were then deposited with those who blasphemed the Vaishnavas. By the order of Mahaprabhu, all the devotees then began a huge kirtan in which Mahaprabhu and the two brothers danced. At the end of the kirtan, everyone sat down, their bodies covered in dust, and Mahaprabhu declared that Jaga and Madhya were Mahabhagavatas. After ordering everyone to respect them as Mahabhagavatas, He warned that if anyone acted to the contrary or criticized the two, they would be ruined as a result of that Vaishnava aparad. Thereafter, Śrī Mahaprabhu took everyone to the Ganga, wherein they all freely engaged in tumultuous water sports. In those water sports, everyone was defeated by Mahaprabhu. In the water sports between Sri Advaita and Nityananda, Advaita Prabhu glorified Nityananda on the pretext of criticizing him and revealed that he himself was Lord Vishnu. At the end of the water sports, Mahaprabhu gave his own flower garland prasad to Jaga and Madhya and sent everyone to eat lunch. During this period, the demigods would daily come to see Chaitanya's pastimes and offer various services, but no one other than the Lord recognized them. Thereafter, the author ends this chapter with a description of the formidable consequences of Vaishnava aparad. So that will be a very nice reading. We'll see how far we can get. But isn't the Caitanya-bhagavata amazing? Isn't it amazing? Oh. Yes, so this important lesson about Vaishnava aparad is actually in many chapters, right? In Caitanya-bhagavata. So we'll be able to hear the exact descriptions of Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur. This is the summary of this chapter. Yes, Maharaj.
So Mahaprabhu declared that they were Mahabhagavats. So could one, how to reflect on that properly? Is that Kripa Siddha, or are they just are they eternal associates of Mahaprabhu, and that was their part of their Leela to glorify Mahaprabhu and Nityananda?
Well, Mahaprabhu's Leela is Naravat Leela, and so are the associates, right? The associates are also Naravat Leela. There is previous life. What is that? Yeah. One more appearance of the two gatekeepers, right?
Right.
But in the Naravat Leela, this took place. In Naravat Leela, they were drunkards. They were very degraded. They were the most sinful. I think in this chapter, it also describes how, who is it that writes down all the sinful activities?
Chitragupta.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
In Yamaraja's court?
Yeah. He's the
Chitragupta.
secretary. Yamaraj fainted.
Right. Yeah. I think that the chapter after this is called Yamaraja's Samkirtan. Yeah. Yeah, so there were so many sinful activities, it wasn't even possible for him to write them all. So this is the Naravat Leela, the human-like pastimes. And when Mahaprabhu said they're Mahabhagavatas, he meant to say that he was turning these drunkards into the Mahabhagavats and the mercy of Nityananda Prabhu. How else could anyone become instantaneously a Mahabhagavat? So we don't have to think, oh, this is from previous life, this, that. No, this is the actual pastime of delivering the representation of these two sinful persons was the representation of all the persons in the Kali Yuga. And can we not see that? We see it everywhere. We really see it everywhere. So that will be in this chapter, how Nityananda Prabhu requests Mahaprabhu, don't kill them, don't kill them. If you have not come in this incarnation for that. Because if you kill them, you'll have to kill everyone. Because they're the representation of all the sinful living entities in the Kali Yuga. So, Wonderful chapter. We'll read that tomorrow. And we'll see which direction we take in our continuation of reading nectar of all varieties, of all rasas, of all of our acharyas. However, the Vilapa Kushamanjali is waiting. Yes?
And we have to enter that through Nityananda Prabhu's mercy.
Yes. Actually, I feel very happy to read this because, we will be much more capable of reading Vilapa Kushamanjali by this sweet nectar that we're drinking of Nityananda Katha. Yes. You want to finish the video?
Oh. I might have to take it off to find the button.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, here, let me do that then. Jai Śrī Nityananda Rama Ki Jai. Finish. Oh.